Hi, welcome to this event, Crackdown on BDS, Criminalization of Dissent. This is a Faculty for Palestine event. My name is Vannina Sztainbok, and Faculty for Palestine, for those of you who don't know, is an organization of faculty, about 1,000 faculty. It formed in 2008. And it's a network. There's about 40 chapters, and including, for example, in Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa. And if you're interested, we will be passing a sheet around if you're interested in being on our list of events. And one of the campaigns that we have right now is an academic boycott on the connections between universities and Canadian universities and Israeli universities. That is one of our campaigns. So this event is in response to the February 18th motion that was passed in the Canadian Parliament, which condemned BDS. And what it particularly condemned, I'm going to quote, is any and all attempts by Canadian organizations, groups, or individuals to promote BDS, both here at home and abroad. And so we've got together this fantastic panel of speakers because we really wanted to start a discussion on this to address a number of questions and get the analysis started, and also to encourage further discussion with all of you. So we're really happy to see so many folks who are interested in discussing the implications of this motion. And some of the questions that we posed and that we asked our speakers to address are what are the legal implications of this motion? Is BDS, is it being criminalized? Is that what's happening? What is the political and transnational context within which this is happening? And how are activists and university campuses, how have they been affected and by the vilification of BDS? And lastly, we want to think about what does this mean for the BDS movement? And here we hope, towards the end we'll have a chance for a broader discussion, including all of you, to think about this. What does this mean, and how do we move forward? So this speakers panel discussion addresses this recent attack on BDS. And it includes our panelists who come from different backgrounds, including legal, campus-based, labor, and to give us their reflections and analysis on what this means. So first, to my very far left, maybe you could raise your hand, is Alan Sears, who is a professor of sociology at Ryerson University and a Faculty for Palestine organizer. And Alan is going to give us some background on the overall anti-BDS offensive for the past 10 years, including the centrality of the campus in organizing globally and by students and faculty.
Thanks everybody for being here. It's really wonderful to see so many people, and this is a very important discussion. It's wonderful also knowing a number of the people who are here, that there are people here from a number of different movements and locations in terms of the fight that is going on right now. The movement for boycott, divestment, and sanctions was launched in 2005 by over 175 Palestinian civil society organizations, ranging across the range of different kinds of organizations and across the world in terms of where Palestinians are living and are organized. Over 175 Palestinian civil society organizations issued a call for a campaign of boycotts, divestments, and sanctions inspired by the Anti-Apartheid movement in South Africa and others against Israel until it complies with international law and Palestinian rights, until the fundamental rights of Palestinians are recognized. It was basically after many, many years of political frustration that I think people here know about, and it was on the anniversary of an International Court of Justice decision, and that again was nothing happened after that decision. So there was a sense of an impossibility of carrying on politics as usual, a need for a different kind of tactic, and a call for global solidarity in response to that. And what's remarkable, if people know the history, for example, of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, it took a long time for the movement to build support globally. It took a long time for the movement to have legs. In a remarkable amount of time, this movement has really shown that it has legs. It has really hit the ground, and we've seen everything from student unions in Canada and the States, elsewhere. We've seen organizations like G4S withdraw from the kind of work that they were doing in Israel. We've seen a whole range of different support around artistic and cultural boycott and so on. And because the movement has actually shown that it has a real purchase, we've seen an offensive. And right now we seem to be seeing, since the beginning of BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, since 2005, we've seen people who've tried to block discussion of this movement. That's often been the first response. We're now seeing a whole new round of this offensive. I'm just going to briefly describe what that looks like globally, talk a little bit about common themes, and then throw over, because there's lots of different people who are going to be talking. In Canada, the most recent form that this has taken is a motion that the Conservatives brought forward, who are now, just to remind people, not the government anymore, but nonetheless they brought it forward as an opposition motion, and the Liberals supported it. In this particular case, the NDP actually opposed it to condemn the movement for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It was not a move to criminalize, and other people will talk specifically about this, but it was a movement to condemn, and it included language like from Michel Rampel, who was the co-presenter of it. This is not Canadian, and thus I condemn it. The BDS movement calls for the stifling of academic freedom. So there's certain themes, and I'm going to talk about some of the themes that are there. So this motion goes on top of a whole history of attempting to stop BDS organizing in Canada, whether that's campus silencing campaigns, posters being banned and so on, to the Parliamentary Commission on Anti-Semitism that happened a few years ago. In Britain, if people have followed, the Cameron government has actually passed a motion to try to prevent municipalities and public bodies, including universities, from making ethical purchasing or investment decisions, saying that they should only be considering the economics of those decisions and not the ethics of them. And that's aimed very clearly at BDS and at the fact that some municipalities in Britain and some universities have actually opted in various ways for boycott. In France, we've seen perhaps the most vicious crackdown on Palestine solidarity and on BDS organizing that has included banning demonstrations in various ways and statements from a whole range of, it's included arrests of people at demonstrations, and it's included the Prime Minister of France criticizing boycotts of Israel, saying that they fuel anti-Semitic sentiment. So a tremendous crackdown in France. In the United States, we've seen a motion in Congress. We've seen the University of California actually try, now they have withdrawn this now, but in the first version of this motion, attempted to use anti-Zionism as a human rights category. So to ban anti-Zionism on human rights grounds as a legitimate ground of discussion on campus. We've seen motions in some states penalizing academic associations and or institutions that support boycott, divestment, sanctions. In Israel, about a month ago, a little over a month ago, was the Stop the Boycott conference held in Jerusalem, attended by Israeli leaders as well as diplomats from the European Union and the US, at which they noted the successes of the movement. It's kind of interesting when you read records from this conference. It's partly the success of the movement that got them going, but included very alarming statements, including the alarming statement from the Israeli Minister of Transport, Intelligence, and Atomic Energy, Israel Katz, who called on Israel to engage in targeted civil eliminations of BDS leaders with the help of Israeli intelligence. And that sounds awfully close to the term alludes to the term of targeted assassinations, and there are very real concerns now for the health and safety of Palestinian activists in the BDS movement. As well, the poet Darin Tatur was imprisoned for a poem calling on Palestinians to resist. So we are seeing an attack in Canada that's part of a global pattern. And it's a pattern because boycott, divestment, sanctions is actually working. People are signing on despite attempts to create a wall of silencing, because what happens when you get beyond that wall of silencing is that people are actually exposed to the realities on the ground. Thank you very much. And as people are exposed to the realities on the ground, the case for justice is actually much clearer than the opponents of BDS would prefer. There's certain themes that have recurred, and I'm sure that various speakers will touch on. One of the themes in the anti-BDS campaigning everywhere has been that it's anti-Semitic, that it denies the Jewish right to self-determination, to which, in my view, the logical question is self-determination on whose lands. It can only be exclusively anti-Semitic through the erasure of Palestine and the forgetting of the historical experience of Palestinian people. And that's something that we will talk about more. And an attack on the legitimacy of boycott as a tactic, which is something, again, that we heard at the time of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, where boycott was attacked and attacked and attacked, until eventually many of those people who'd originally attacked it tried to pretend they were actually on side all along. And so the claim of academic freedom is used in various ways, and people will be addressing this idea of the free market of ideas as a solution to the problems of the Palestinians. At the core of the anti-BDS movement is, in fact, the erasure of Palestinian realities, which has been part of the history of the Israeli state, and a relentless focus on the experience of Jewish Israelis and Jewish people elsewhere, but a total lack of attention to the actual life of Palestinians, the historical experience of Palestinians. We see boycott, divestment, sanctions as part of a decolonization movement that has a long history and that includes everything from Black Lives Matter and the occupations at Indian and Northern Affairs that we've seen, through to the South African anti-apartheid movement, movements for indigenous rights, and understandings of the present in terms of histories of slavery, particular migration regimes, and so on. And we're here today, we hope to carry on the movement, and part of that is discussing what exactly is at stake in these attacks, what's the form that they are taking, and what can we together begin to do about it to carry this movement forward. Thank you very much.